So, the most recent chapter of My Hero Academia, Manga chapter 340, has finally come out, and let's just say that in this chapter, we get a surprising reveal of a returning character, and it's not who you expect, but it's probably who you'll expect, and we'll get right into it, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Drew, and I'm here to do my review of My Hero Academia, Manga chapter 340, titled, The Story of How We Became Heroes, Part 3! So yeah, we're going to be continuing that titling scheme, most likely until the end of the series, or until Horikoshi feels like, not doing it anymore. But yes, when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia, we once again follow up on what we saw at the end of last chapter. In this chapter, for the most part, a quick summary of what we get a summary of the plan, what the heroes are going to have to do to defeat Shigaraki and All For One with the help of a special guest, as well as tying into Aizawa and his conversation with Aoyama and what Aoyama is going to be doing in the future, as well as seeing a potential return of another character that we truly love. And we'll dive right into the review. But before we do that, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I cover the spoilers, I do reviews, I do discussions of My Hero Academia. So if that's something that you're interested in and you'd like to see more content from me, subscribe to my YouTube channel. And without the way, let's get right into the review. So when it comes to this chapter, the first half of this chapter primarily covers the conversation that All Might and Hawks have with the other police officers. The setting of this conversation actually takes place outside of the central hospital area, where we get a little bit more information about the area itself and how it's surrounded by police stations. So most likely we can infer that Hawks, All Might, the police officers, and their special guest Ragdoll are all in a local police station talking about the plan. And as I brought up, we get to see Ragdoll, and I'm not going to say that she looks very attractive, but damn, she looks very attractive. But she's actually here for a reason, and you probably know why. Her search quirk got stolen by All For One, so it just makes sense to have her on the team at this moment to be able to give them a little bit more information, as well as give them sort of a strategic advantage against All For One, because she would know how well her quirk works. As well as we get a little bit more confirmation that she won't be here with the rest of the Wild Wild Pussycats, which does make her sad, but they also give this idea that because of the reveal of Aoyama being the traitor, they now have to limit how many people can actually be involved in this plan. And as far as we know right now with this plan, the characters that are involved are Best Jeanist, Endeavor, Hawks, All Might, Tsukachi the police officer, and the other police officers, the pilots that were a part of Star and Stripes crew, Ragdoll, as well as potentially the fellow Class 1A students, Aizawa, and potentially Mount Lady, the heroes that were most associated with Endeavor in that group, which could also include Kamui Woods as well as Edshot. So there's probably that many people that's going to be involved, but the ones that we are focusing on are All Might and Hawks, where, to summarize what the plan is, it's separate and elimination one at a time. They've come to the conclusion that All For One at this moment is significantly weaker than Shigaraki, which explains why he didn't go to fight with Shigaraki against Star and Stripe, because he apparently does recognize his name as All For One, which means that All For One is now All For One's name, and he identifies as All For One, which means that we won't get a true proper name for him, which means that it's going to continue to be confusing. Oh my gosh, Horikoshi, why did you name him All For One? And why did you name the titular power that he's seeking One For All? It's so confusing. But anyway, yeah. So their main goal is to make sure that they're separated by 10 kilometers of distance, or around 6.6 miles, just to guarantee that they have a chance of winning, because if they don't, then they do not think that they'll be able to win at all. So you have the characters pretty much talk about how they need to isolate them from each other, and how potentially some warriors like Dabi are obviously going to get in the way, which is why they're going to separate all of the main hitters and eliminate them one at a time. Most likely we're going to have Dabi, he's going to be separated, and they're going to fight him with a separate team, and potentially this could mean that Toga is going to have her own separate one-on-one fight, as well as potentially Spinner could only have his own a separate fight, just as a way to eliminate all of the big hitters and making sure that they are not able to keep Shigaraki and All for One together. Which is a very basic strategy, which could mean that because we're learning it now, either it succeeds completely or it ends in utter failure and they are only able to do it for a short amount of time, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. And let's just say that one piece of this information that I really just want to go into is just seeing Ragdoll just interacting with the characters and how she's, you know, a part of the Wild Wild Pussycats and is always saying nya nya. And we have Sansa here, who's a literal cat, and it looks like he's just not having any of it. So I just enjoy that interaction that she has with everyone here. So yeah, the goal is to crush all of the Vanguard one at a time while separating Shigaraki and All for One. But then you just have Tsukachi, who is once again very skeptical of this entire situation. And I think he's probably the voice of reason in all of the situation because he does not trust Aoyama at all, and this is going to transition into the second half of this chapter, which we are going to be focusing on a conversation between Aoyama as well as Eraserhead. Where you just have Tsukachi who's questioning Alma, is like, yo, I understand what happened with the kid, but you know, he betrayed society, and you know, I'm a police officer, I'm supposed to uphold the laws of society, so you know, I have a tendency to like not trust people that decide to throw humanity at the wayside. So are you sure we can really trust him? So yeah, you just have Tsukachi saying this to All Might, and All Might's like, yeah, I understand. Like, I trust this boy, but also I trust the man that trusts this boy, as we cut over to the conversation between Aoyama and Aizawa. So yeah, this second part is pretty much just their conversation, where we're actually getting a little bit more on the inside of Aoyama and what he's thinking at this moment and what he believes in himself. But also we get to see more of Aizawa's ruse that he put up in the last chapter, because in this conversation, Aizawa's goal is to make sure that he's able to break the fear and the hold that is holding Aoyama back. As while they're talking, Aizawa is questioning what Aoyama is so afraid of, as we also get the confirmation that he isn't rigged to explode, and that most likely All for One has only allowed traitors to explode after the fight with All Might his first time, or potentially the second time. It's not really clear, but it's implying the second time. Also, the fact that they elaborate more on the idea that if he had this idea or had this ability prior, then he wouldn't have killed people in front of others as forms of showing fear and threatening them if he could just explode them at any moment. So at the very least, we're seeing that Horikoshi is really trying to cover his bases about why Aoyama is still alive, and showing more of All for One's like sort of duplicitous side, and showing that he basically ruled Aoyama through fear and fear alone, and that is what Aizawa is trying to break. So we just have Aoyama pretty much saying that he's afraid of All for One, but he's also afraid of pretty much like breaking the trust of his classmates once again and potentially hurting them. And he feels as if he faces All for One more time, that he may do it over and over again, and he's just afraid that he won't be able to shine as brightly as they can. And that he says something really sad and depressing, that all he really wants to do is just be away from everyone else and just die. And this moment is just showing how broken Aoyama is, and that even though the kids do believe in him, he still can't believe in himself. And that's where Aizawa is coming in. And Aizawa actually drops some truth on Aoyama that can't be avoided. Because I know people are mad at the fact that Class 1A accepted Aoyama immediately and sort of kind of like forgave him immediately. And like people are like, oh man, this is so unrealistic. How could they do this? Blah, blah, blah. But people still fail to realize that even though the classmates, his fellow classmates, do forgive him in a sense and don't hold it against him, literally everyone else is. Even in this moment, Aizawa still sort of kind of holds it against him by saying that, yeah, after all of this is over, I actually can't guarantee that you can stay at UA. Sure, what your classmates did were great, but at this moment, you only have one option. You have to fight. And as he's doing this to scare Aoyama, but he's also doing it to tell him like, yeah, this is just how it is, and because of how it is, you can't just quit. And then you just have Aoyama trying to fight against this idea about like, but how can you really use me? I'm a villain. Like, how can you really even trust me? And Aizawa just comes out saying like, because I know you. I'm your teacher, and I'm gonna make sure that nothing bad happens to you. Sure, you did some bad stuff, but hey, I'm still here to protect you, and I'm not gonna let you die in a hole because I'm your teacher, and I care about you. And so yeah, it just makes sense that Aizawa is the character that is able to tell Aoyama this, because he's the type of person that was filled with regret and remorse because he was unable to save Shirokuma when he was younger, and that when it comes to the lesson that he wanted to teach his students, mainly when it comes to the expulsion, and it's that he wants them, even if they are feeling miserable and pathetic, to still walk along the path of being a hero and to lend a helping hand wherever they can. Pretty much, he doesn't want them to throw their lives away, but he wants them to treasure their lives, and if they truly want to be heroes, continue down that path with that mindset in their head. And once again confirms to Aoyama that he's going to be okay, and that he's going to protect him and everyone else, and that he just needs to have faith in them. And as Aizawa tells Aoyama this, we see that Aoyama sort of kind of gains a little bit more confidence and a little bit more strength in his eyes, but he still hasn't fully come around yet. He's still sort of in that mindset of him being a criminal and that he can't really be help to anyone. But then here's where we get the final part of the chapter, where it's revealed that he's not going to be alone and that he's probably going to have help from a special someone. And as we get to the end of this chapter, we see that the special someone is Shinso, as we see that he is hanging from a tree like a Spider-Man that he is, because of course Horikoshi likes Spider-Man, as his fellow classmates are telling him to like, come on, let's go, as we have Aizawa saying that you'll be walking alongside all of us. End of chapter, most likely referring to both Aoyama and Shinso. So, like I said, when it comes to this chapter of My Hero Academia, I think that this was a good chapter of My Hero Academia. It's not something to like write home about, but I still think that it is a very good, if not just a solid chapter of My Hero Academia. We are continuing to set up for the final battle by knowing what the plan is beforehand, which could mean that it could fail or it could be very successful, and the main goal is to separate All For One from Shigaraki by 10 kilometers, as well as separating out the Vanguard unit and taking out the Vanguard unit one at a time, which is very strategic and it makes sense. It's simple, but it's straightforward and it will most likely work. So we're just setting up for how we're going to have the final fights and how it's not just going to be this big bombastic war like the previous one, but it's going to be more small scale battles that are going to most likely have their focus, as well as having this bigger war being the backdrop. But also getting to see more characters involved like Ragdoll, and that she's most likely going to be playing a bigger role than we would think, as well as having this chapter pretty much just have the focus on showing Aoyama through Aizawa that it's okay, that what he did was bad, and that he may still have to repent for what he did after the fact, but that he still needs to sort of kind of like man up or to gain the courage to continue down the path, because Aizawa wanted to teach him and the other kids to value their lives, to value who they are, so that they don't die like Shirokuma, and that they can actually truly walk down the path of being a hero. And that he most likely also instilled this idea inside of Shinso, as we saw at the end of the chapter. So, what will Shinso be doing in the next chapter or in the final battle? That's probably going to be a discussion on its own, but potentially with his involvement with Aoyama, most likely they're going to introduce Shinso as well as Aoyama back into the fold, potentially at the same time, maybe not next chapter, maybe not immediately, but probably sometime during the war, where Shinso is going to be most likely Aoyama's handler, in a sense where Aoyama has to respond to whatever Shinso says, which means that if he does like accidentally betray them or is forced to betray them, that Shinso will be able to prevent that from happening and sort of keep him in a calm state, which will allow him to actually come back and like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that again. So that's a potential. Or Shinso is most likely going to actually play a bigger role in fighting in the war, because he does have an amazing quirk. So that's also a possibility. You may be wondering like, well, he doesn't have a hero license. To my response is, they're literally an anarchy. They probably won't care. And he has at least some experience being a hero. So he'll be fine. I promise. He'll be fine. He's a second year, potentially. He'll be fine. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this chapter. not really much I can really add to that at this moment without going into a whole lot of speculation. But yeah, overall, I thought this was a good chapter, and hopefully you thought the same. And let me ask you, what did you think of this chapter? Did you think that was good? Did you think that was great? Do you think that we are focusing too much on the planning and want to get straight into the action? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Leave a like on the video if you liked it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more content like this. And don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified for whenever I upload more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!